I'm so lonely.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
Hi there everyone, I'm Luke Hector and this is the Broken Meeple, a show where I devote my time to ranting and raving about board games, but usually more the ranting part. Hopefully you tuned into my previous video where I talked about 12 or 13 solo games that I enjoy. Well, we're gonna finish off the rest of that list because, as I said before, cannot do top 10 solo games. It's just not possible. I play too many games solo. I can chop and change between which ones I like and don't like at any particular time, and it just felt better to just go and carpet bomb about 25 solo games that I do really enjoy. And if I ever get time later on in the year, maybe we'll do another 25. We shall see. But these are in no particular order, just unranked 25 games that I reckon that if you're a solo player, you should be hunting down. And I'm sure even by the time we get through this list of 25, there's going to be games that I've not talked about that you might think are fantastic, in which case you can put them in the comments. There may be a good reason. I may not have played them. I may not necessarily agree. I may think the game is crap, in which case I don't want to play it solo. So there's likely to be all sorts of reasons. But let's get on with it. Okay, so first up we have got, since the last one, we've got, well, Kickstarter has just literally put out the expansion for this one. The second expansion, if you will. But regardless of the expansions, I just enjoy playing this game solo every now and again, and that is Earth. Yep, good old Earth right behind me. And yes, Abundance has not come through the door yet. I will, no doubt, have a look at this Animal Kingdom one that's been announced. But regardless of expansions, Earth is just a fun game in general and a really good one to play solo. Solo effectively puts you up against a sort of semi-AI, which you have a very tiny deck of cards that dictates what action it does, so it will trigger off your effects. But on top of that, certain things that you do could potentially be fueling the points for the AI. So you have to kind of balance out what you want to do versus how many points you think the AI is going to get, and then it's a case of beat the AI. Pretty straightforward, nothing groundbreaking, shall we say, in terms of its design, but Earth is Earth. It's a really fun tableau building game where I get to, churn through a million cards, build up this very nice display of really nice looking plants, and build my little engine, get points, and it just works really well. It's definitely one I kind of like playing it sort of 2-3 player a lot, rather than just necessarily solo, but occasionally I just want to mess around with a bucket load of cards and I can just whip out Earth nice and quick, play it solo, and in the box it goes. It's another one a bit like Cascadia where it's relatively quick to set up and pretty quick and easy to play, therefore not too bad. I think the only downside I had with it was that the solo rules for it do word some of the actions a little bit weird. Particularly I think the red action is worded a bit weird in the book, but once you get past that little hurdle, it's still pretty good fun.
I'll turn you into a f***ing tree.
Next up, I believe it's a small box that's still down there. Yes, this is a game that I touted the praises of when I first played its Korean version. And the Korean version is just as good as this American version. It really doesn't matter which one you get. They're the same game, it's just which ones you prefer in aesthetics or how I suppose the quality of components is slightly better in the new version, but not a massive deal. This is Coffee Roaster. I love my coffee. I mean, I did originally have this filled up with coffee. This time it's got green tea in it. But I love a good cup of coffee, and Coffee Roaster is just a nice solo bag building game. You put tokens in the bag depending on what coffee recipe it is. You draw out tokens, and depending on what you get, you can do these various actions. Exchange, swap, draw more, discard some. You're trying to get rid of the water. You're trying to not infuse your bag with too many smoke tokens. And you've got a certain amount of time that you've got to do it, but you're kind of like, well, I could wait a little bit longer or try and do it in the efficient time. We'll see. You build it up with different size bean tokens as well as flavorings and things like that, and then eventually you pour out your cup of coffee, 10 tokens, see what you get, and see if you can get the target threshold that you need in order to make the perfect cup for that particular recipe. You got a lot of recipes in there, some are more challenging than others, but it's just a really good little fun solo bag buildy game. I mean, again, quick to set up, quick to deal with, put the tokens in and then get started, and you've got a lot of different ideas of like, well, I could turn those two into that, or exchange those for beans, let them go, but then I really want to do this. I've only got 2 more rounds left before I need to start pouring the cup, otherwise it's going to burn. All these little nice little decisions, and I do kind of miss the Korean version. I've got the American Stronghold one. I mean, was it Stronghold? the DLP game Stronghold version. And it's nice, it's decent enough, but it's very brown and beige in its look, and I kind of miss the old Korean version. I wish I'd kept and held on to that one, because I think that bright, almost like sort of Sashi and Sashi style look, I think suited the game more than the new version. But whatever. Pick your poison. You probably will never see the Korean one ever again, unless you go to Essen maybe, you might get lucky. But honestly, regardless, it's just an aesthetics perspective. Grab this one if you want a nice small box, bag builder for solo. It really does the job.
I couldn't stop thinking about coffee. I need a nap. Coffee time!
Big game downstairs on my shelf. It's you can play it co-op, but I usually prefer to play this solo, maybe 2 players, but typically this is like my solo skirmish miniatures on a map beat 'em up game, because I don't normally go for these. I mean, I reviewed Apex Legends recently, and that was fine, it was good, I gave it a 7, but it didn't blow me away. Street Masters, on the other hand, did. Street Masters is just a really good fun solo game, and it taps a lot of those nostalgic feels for like Streets of Rage, Golden Axe, that you played in the old days, coupled with a little bit of Street Fighter and that sort of thing, and even some anime influences here and there. But it's basically, here's your map, here's your scenario, here's your adversary, got a bit of a Sentinels in the Multiverse style vibe here, but you can pick one of these major, insane amount of characters that you've got with the expansions in there, and they may have some special ability that, it could be like the Sonya Blade equivalent, it could be Ryu from Street Fighter, it could be, a Panda Warrior, who remembers the Panda from Jujutsu Kaisen, that's kind of the way I see it. And you pick one of these heroes and you battle against the adversaries, and they've got little minions and henchmen and the main boss, each with their own little rules. But you want to get hit to an extent, because the more you get hit, the more you charge up your really cool ability, and then you start going out with that. Everybody's got their own little deck. Again, you don't have to deck build. Everyone feels asymmetric. It's just the sheer amount of variety I've got in this game is kind of insane, and the rules aren't that complicated. They could be written better, I admit, but once you get past that, it's still not a particularly complex game, and it really does that theme of kind of like the Streets of Rage. That's the best comparison I can think of. The scroller, here's your 2 guys, go kill the enemies, you're both slightly unique, and you can find a roast turkey in a dustbin somewhere to get health.
Time to recharge! Did you just eat that garbage can rotisserie chicken?
Yeah, these things happen apparently. But it's a really solid game. I've got the original version, Blacklist Games. Some people will have got a new version from Steamforged Games. I've heard there's been some issues with the production quality on that one in terms of what's on the cards and stuff. I've got the old version. I'm sticking with that.
Let's go bust some balls!
This is my roll and write choice for a solo game, and there are solo roll and writes that are fine, Next London and a few others that are, cool for a little solo play. Maybe even Harvest Dice. Does that one do solo? I can't remember. But if we're talking like a beefy roll and write game, okay, most people would turn to Hadrian's Wall. I've already said my piece on why I find that one meh and why I'm not that interested in it. But I do get a little bit of a kick now and again bringing out Twilight Inscription as a solo game, because, in the multiplayer sense, there's only really a reason to play it with up to 3 players, and that's only because you've got the neighbouring sides for the warfare section. But the AI does a pretty good job of giving you a side person for the warfare board anyway. But as a solo game, it's just easier to, have the 4 boards in front of you: Industry, Warfare, Exploration, and whatever Planetfall was, and to work off these 4 boards, right? I'm gonna work an Exploration this turn, roll the dice, right? What can I use? I can use that dude, that will unlock this and that for there. Okay, next one, I want the Industry board, right? I can do this, tick that one off, and I just found it a lot easier to follow than the likes of Hadrian's Wall, where everything's cluttered up onto 2 sheets. At least this one being spread out on 4 enabled it to be separated better. Plus you've got all the different asymmetric factions that you can play with their own little special abilities. That's really cool. You can really diverge into what path to victory you're going to go for based on what event cards come out and what you roll and stuff. It's just a really satisfying game, and I love that whole neon look to it. If anything's kind of annoying with it, it's the fact that those dry erase orange pens have got the worst rubbers on them ever. So you basically have littered your boards with orange, and you need to spend a fair while wiping the stuff off because it's dry erase. Maybe I would have preferred a pen and paper version like Hadrian's Wall would for that, but that's a small niggle. It's still a really good solo game if you want a beefy roll and write, and Hadrian's Wall just felt a bit dry or a bit, I don't know, a bit tedious for your liking. I prefer Twilight Inscription.
Now, there'll be plenty of time to discuss your objections when and if you return.
I said that as a multiplayer game, this was a bit of a solitaire venture. You know, could be better, but I just played it last night actually with 3 of us and we all had a good time with it. But I said as a solo game, I think this works pretty well, and that is Life for the Amazonia. This is from Bad Comic Games. I've been reviewing a couple of those recently, and out of the 2 that I reviewed, I kind of prefer this one solo, because the game already feels fairly solo anyway. I mean, you can only influence so much what the players are doing based on, oh, I took the card you wanted, or I took the animal meeple you wanted. But if you want Cascadia Plus, so you want to be able to build your display of map tiles, put animal meeples on, little plants and trees, and try to create your own little jungle ecosystem to score points while dealing with a nice array of nature cards for variety and all that lot, then this actually ends up being quite a decent game. And you can even have like little challenges for, you know, how you approach it. So it's got like a bit like the Cascadia one. You've got like the normal basic, right, no changes here, but then you've got all the little variants that you can do to tweak the rules, or say you can't take certain things, or you've got restrictions on other bits, you know, so that adds a bit of variety. But even then, it's just a really cool bag builder game. You know, build your bag with the resource tokens that you can upgrade as the game goes on, do more powerful effects, grab the cards, expand with trees and plants and map tiles, or grab the different, like, you know, the jaguars, the frogs, little otters. It's got otters in it. I mean, come on, don't you want a game with otters in it? Otters are so lovely. But yeah, it's a really solid game all round. It just takes a bit long in multiplayer, which is why you have to house rule taking out some of the meeples in order to make the game shorter, and you get a little bit of downtime. You know, as I said, I have pointed out these flaws before. You don't get that problem in solo mode though. Solo mode is basically a challenge. It's a gold, silver, bronze style challenge to, you know, beat the scenario in a good way. And yeah, that just works for me. I just find that to be a really decent, solid solo mode that I can, you know, it takes longer to get out of the box and set up than something like Cascadia, obviously. I mean, the time it says on the box to play the game is complete crap. It's like there's no way you will. But if I don't want to just do little Cascadia and I want something a little bit more meaty, Life for the Amazonia is the one that I can pull out, and it definitely works for a solo perspective.
What do trees have to talk about, except the consistency of squirrel droppings?
There's a couple of these I want to talk about, but we're going on to Garfield Games. I speak very highly of them at times, and their solo modes are a little bit more hit and miss. You know, most of their games I tend to play as a multiplayer session. Sometimes the AI is a little bit cheaty, sometimes it's not quite representative of multiplayer. But I found that the recent Inventors of the South Tigris actually had a pretty solid solo mode in it. You know, it's good to play it multiplayer because you've got the interaction with all the different tiles of who, you know, invents the item, who publishes it, who builds it, that kind of thing. The AI does a pretty good job of supplementing that. You know, it will make decisions maybe slightly different to what a multiplayer person would do, but it's not far off. And in terms of the rule set, it's not that much more complicated. It's, you know, you've got a little bit of extra rules to learn, but it didn't take too long to get used to it. The actual, like, operation of what it does with the deck of cards that you flip over is relatively straightforward compared to other heavy Euros. And with that in place, it means that I can enjoy the insane amount of puzzle solving nature that you have with Inventors of, you know, how do I build up my workshop? Do I sell my boats? Do I use the meeples here? When am I going to publish? When am I going to invent? What am I going to test? That kind of thing. And you can do it with a relatively good AI system. That means the game doesn't take forever either. Though granted, it takes a little bit to set it up. That is the one downside. But compared to a lot of the other solo modes for the Garfield Games ones, I seem to kind of like this one a bit more than others. I mean, Architects didn't really get a half-decent solo mode until the expansion came out. Don't like Paladins that much, so I don't really care about that one. It feels solo anyway. Viscounts, fine, you know, not bad. Wayfarers is an okay solo mode, but a little bit cheaty on the AI front. And Scholars is a little bit more effort to work that solo mode than the Inventors one I found, but it's still decent. As I say, most of the Garfield games can give you a half-decent solo mode, but Inventors and one other kind of, they kind of go a bit above and beyond. They sort of go, oh yeah, this is pretty good.
They smell like burning rhesus monkey.
Really? I guess when you're around it all day, you stop noticing.
Alright, next up, this one is a game that I do enjoy multiplayer, mainly for the interactions with other players, you know, what stories are you going to tell? But in its fair form, you can just play it solo and have a good time with the entire smorgasbord of, you know, sandbox-style cards that you have while telling your own life story. Yep. Pursuit of Happiness right there. Pursuit of Happiness has actually got a pretty good solo mode in it. It's not an AI or anything like that. It's a challenge, you know, beat a score. But it's not just simply, oh, I've got to get 60 points and win. No, it's usually that you have several solo objectives out that says during your life you must have achieved these 3 things. So you have to get a certain amount of points as well as meet those objectives. And, you know, while you're doing that, you can just have fun with all the cool sandbox style cards, telling your life how it is. By the time you're done, your life looks like a complete mess, but it's good that I like it with the challenges. You know, you can have all these, you know, you can have the different challenges to make each game feel a bit different, but if you're worried about the downtime and the length of the game taking a bit long with multiplayer, with solo, you don't have that problem. And it doesn't take that long to set up because you don't need to get every single card out of the box in order to set it up. You're only going to go through so many by yourself. So you can just take a little bit from each deck, plonk them down, and you can throw in what expansions you like. You know, playing multiplayer with all the expansions can be quite unwieldy, can take a little while, it has to be said, but if you're playing by yourself, then fine. Let's have community, let's have the excursions one, I forget that was called, experiences, throw in nostalgia as well. You know what, let's have kids, let's have the Fug's Life, let's have all these mini expansions, because it's just me, I want all the choices, and it's definitely one of those, right, I need a sandbox Euro game for just me. Pursuit of Happiness is going to be one of them. You know, I already mentioned Fields of Owl before. This one, though, if you want something a little bit more I suppose wacky and less rules filled, then yeah, Pursuit of Happiness is going to do the job.
Is sex the only thing that matters to you?
I love you.
Next up on the list we have a card game that is slowly starting to get traction among players, although it's still relatively unheard of. Well, it wasn't unheard of when it got hyped up to high heaven before its release, and then it got released, and then people stopped talking about it. It's like, This is why I'm a little bit wary of hype. But I've seen on Facebook that some people, particularly solo players, have started to get this one a bit more into the, the player's limelight. And I still talk praises of this one. I've done a review and everything for Evenfall. Evenfall, a very solid engine builder card game with a bit of a twist on how it works. You're trying to build up like these places of power, these ritual cards and that. But you've got the inner circle and the outer circle, whatever they're called. And basically one is good for resource generation and stuff like that. And the other one is how you actually score points. You've got ritual cards, you've got the actual, I forget what they call them, what are they called? The people cards, whatever, they can give you endgame scoring or some perpetual ability, and it's a really cool system with fairly tight resource management. The AI in this isn't so much an AI, it's mostly a board that, as you're doing everything, you move a marker around the board and it triggers various things like what cards come out or what happens or how much power it's going to have in the little fight phase at the end. And so you get to have a pretty good solid time doing all the cool engine builder stuff. Eventually AI is going to have a point total that you must beat, and it's not just flat 100, 150, you've got to bear in mind what it is the AI is doing, but it's pretty straightforward. You just move a marker around the board and trigger the effect when it happens, and then you can get on with your own thing. So it's not a full-fledged AI per se, but it's enough to enable you to play the game solo and have a decent time while trying out all sorts of different paths to victory with all the different cards that you've got. Throw in the Crystal Path expansion, you've got even more to deal with. So it's again, a decent solid mode that doesn't warrant too much extra downtime and extra rules complexity to get the solo mode in your mind and learn. This one is a pretty quick solo teach, to yourself, and then you can get going and just have fun. But this game in general just doesn't get a lot of buzz from people, and I don't know why. Why was it hyped up before and then not buzzed about as much at the time? It's not that the game's not good, because pretty much everybody who plays it says it's really good. It just, for some reason, I think a hype train started and it wasn't justified to have it. But honestly, check out my review. It's a solid game, and if you want to play it solo and you can't find the players to play it with, then, help is at hand.
We have found the witch, may we burn her?
Next up, okay, I've talked about campaign games before, and, there are, you know, big campaigns and small campaigns and such of that. Let's say you just want nice, simple, little campaign game that's, you know, easy rules, but variety. I can really do my own path. I can chop and change what I do, but I don't want overly complex rules, and I don't want to have to commit to like 13 chapters and, you know, see what I'm doing here. Well, then you want something like Lands of Galzia. Lands of Galzia is pretty much choose your own adventure, sort of, you know, build up a world style like campaign game, but there's no real sense of an ending. It just carries on, and you might think, well, that's a little bit annoying, you know, no real ending. Well, you can reset the game and start again, new character, new skills, but the idea is that as you go through, the world changes a little bit based on decisions you've made. You've got all the like the storyboard text that you read on the app. It's done via app, and it's really good. And, you know, you choose like, all right, what am I going to do with this person? Am I going to try and persuade them to let us pass, or am I just going to punch them in the head and, like, you know, let myself through that way? And your skills will have an effect on this. It's got a cool little dice system, but it's the fact that the game feels like it's evolving as you play each one, because one game you do these activities and then you'll find some cool items and then next time you might think, you know what, I'm going to change my skills to suit this style of play a bit more. Oh, I found this item. You know what? This item can go away. I'm going to try this one now. And so you augment the world and your character just a little bit each time. And a bit like the Seventh Continent or Seventh Citadel and those games, it's got all the cards that you take out. Right, card 330. Oh, I found this cool thing. All right, and it's lightweight, almost Zen-like in its like RPG-ness. You know, it's a very light role-play style, you know, adventure game, almost choose your own adventure style. And with easy rules and a pretty decent save system, it's just one that you can just pull out and have a bit of a laugh with. You know, looks gorgeous, it's got all that Dales of Merchant Snowdale design style artwork, and it does the job. You know, if you're looking for something more meaty and something with a real sense of a beginning, middle, and end, then yeah, this isn't the game for you. But if you want just a nice, light storybook game that you can pull out every now and again, that feels a little bit different each time you play it, then Lands of Galzia is a solid one.
And death.
Okay, 3 more to do. So first up, we're going to go back to Garfield Games and talk about one of their more recent games. Well, I say recent, it was redone recently, but it was actually a fairly old game. The old game wasn't particularly liked, it wasn't very good, nobody particularly liked it. They then redid Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux, basically, and this new version is actually a pretty solid game, although mainly from a solo perspective. In multiplayer, it just feels a bit solitaire-esque. You know, you're drafting cards, but I don't know, multiplayer just doesn't really seem as good a game for that. But you play it solo, where you've got choices of like, you've got a slightly tweaked system of how you draft the cards. Just having this cool, tight resource management game where you've got to build ships and send out heroes and do all these things for points, but you've got a tight system of like, well, hang on, I need these resources, but if I do that, I can't then do this, and you're trying to build your own little engine with the drafted cards. It's a really solid solo game. You know, pretty straightforward, fairly easy rules, and the same style of puzzle solving that you get from Garfield Games, but I just never found that in multiplayer you really cared too much about the other players. I mean, you've got too much stuff to deal with yourself. You don't really have the time to focus on what you're passing cards to. You know, it's like, look, it's hard enough trying to deal with my own stuff without having to think about how to hate draft for you. So even though you've got the simultaneous play in that, the extra players just don't seem worth it. But just play the solo with the little tweaked solo rules for how you draft. I think it's something like you select different piles of cards to pick, and they get added to it. It's I forget the system. It's been a while since I played it, but the general like gist of the game of drafting the cards and building up this like points engine is good fun and pretty straightforward. So it's definitely a massive improvement on the original version. Probably not the cheapest solo game you'll ever buy. You know, you're talking like mid £40 easily just for a solo experience for a card game. But yeah, it's good. I mean, if you don't mind the whole multiplayer solitaire-ish nature of it, then fine. But, you know, knowing that you can play it solo and have a good fun time, it's still on my shelf, and I do bring it out every now and again. It's just been a little while, so the rules are a little bit fuzzy for me, but I think I've done a review for this, so by all means check that one out. You can get more details that way.
No, it's too perilous.
All right, two more. Right, we're going to go into heavy territory here. So this is probably one of the heaviest games that's on this like list of 25. It's the only one from this designer and publisher that I would say I would go for from a solo perspective, and that's Lacerda. So we're talking Lacerda, big Lacerda games here, big heavy Euros. Well, solo mode tends to be very hit and miss with them. You know, the solo mode in some of them is like far too cheaty, far too impossible, a load of rules on top. It's like, oh my god. And certainly this one is not exactly devoid of rules. You do have a reasonable amount of rules to learn, and if you're going to play a Lacerda solo, you're going to have to accept that you've got a decent amount of rules to learn. But I think in terms of gameplay and challenge and theme, the solo mode for Kanban EV is, I think, the best of the Lacerda ones. I enjoy playing that one. Yes, you've got a few extra rules to learn as to how the actions work for it, but having two separate opponents effectively, you know, having Lacerda and Turksy bots as they're called, and one of them acts in a certain way, the other one acts in a bit of a different supportive way, and you're trying to do all the usual thing of like build the cars, design them, you know, not have Sandra come by and knock you down, but you're also trying to stay ahead of the two other players, because if at any point you end up in a situation where I think it's like if you fall too far behind or if something else happens, you could lose the game instantly. So you're actually trying to stay ahead of them while also, you know, getting a decent score and beating them at the end of the day. The only thing I don't like about this solo mode, and it is a bit of an annoyance on it, is that there's a ranking system for how well you did, and I think that every Lacerda game doesn't have an idea as to how to do these fairly. They come up with the most ridiculously impossible ranking systems for, oh, did you do well at this game? Well, how did you do well? Well, I got a load of points, I beat the AI, and I made loads of cool black cards. It was really cool. You know, these saloon, like, hyper cards. Great, fantastic. Oh, no, you didn't do too well. No, you needed at least 3 of these, and 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 3 of these. You know, you needed to diversify across the whole board and be boring.
Stupid! It's stupid!
That's not fun. So basically, I just assume that all the, like, you know, ranking stuff at the end of every Lacerda solo is blank, doesn't exist, and I just play the game, have fun, try a new strategy, and at the end of the day, did I beat the AI? Yes or no? That's good enough for me. You know, seriously, you know, how is it, like, fun to basically say, right, did you have fun playing that game? Well, allow me to beat you down, you know, at this point. You know, while, you know, kick you while you're having a good time there. Yeah, no, you didn't, you sucked. It's like, that is not fun.
That's a fancy word for losing!
So, remove that little aspect, and you've got a pretty decent solo mode. You know, it's definitely lower down, you know, my list. You know, this would be closer to the bottom end of the 25 if I was ranking these, but yeah, it's still something to bear in mind.
Am I so out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong.
And then finally, this one needs a little solo expansion to work, okay? The base set does not give you solo mode, but it's very easy to get the small expansion, I think, either from the publisher or... I think it's mainly from the publisher, but every time they've done an expansion, they've always allowed it on the Kickstarter. But if you can get it, On the Underground has an excellent solo mode. This one basically is such a quick game to set up and play, but you've got the smoothness of how the game plays with, you know, taking this lazy passenger around the route connections. But basically what happens is you lay out a couple of route cards based on the difficulty, and the AI has effectively laid out that entire route for both cards already. So they're already on the board. You've got to build your route around theirs and try and basically stay ahead of their points. I think it's something like, you know, the game is, you lose if you get to the end of the card deck and you haven't beaten their AI score. You know, they start off at whatever total it is. But at any point, if you can overtake them, you win. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to overtake them by building in and around their networks. It's a cool puzzle. And yeah, there's a little luck aspect with where the passenger can go destination-wise, but you got to work with it. But it's so simple. Flip 2 cards, set up their networks, go. Get going. Done. Right, you know what? Flip 2 different network cards over, build their networks, right, go. Get going. And it's just super fast, super cool. And honestly, if you can get it, it's definitely worth it, because I would rather play this solo than 4 or 5 player any day.
This is why Superman works alone.
Whew, right, there we go, everybody. 25 games that I recommend for solo play. As I say, I cannot do a top 10. It just can't work. There's just too many to note. And they're all fun in their own different ways and great at different times. And I haven't even mentioned other games that I've played solo and still enjoy. I mean, Great Western Trail New Zealand's got a decent solo mode in it, which is pretty cool. I'm trying to think. Forest Shuffle has I think an unofficial solo mode you can get, or is it official now? I can't remember, you know, which is half decent. Wondrous Creatures solo mode I reviewed recently. Not bad, not bad. Wingspan's half decent in solo mode. What else have we got? Feast of Odin. I know people will have my head off for not putting it on this list. It's a decent solo mode. It's just the game itself a little bit too Tetrisy for my liking. What else? Well, like, you know, the Arkham Horror and the Lord of the Rings LCGs are a thing. Civilization: A New Dawn has a solo mode in it, you know, if you get the right pieces for it. Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition, great to play on your own, you know, rather than having to try to get the group together. Oh, blimey. XCOM you can play solo, Marvel Dagger, the Arkham Horror 3rd Edition. I'm not sure about Space Base. Can you play that solo? I have to double check on that one. Same with Mystic Vale. Cascadia Roll and Write could work. I mean, Empires of the North. Yeah, there's a load of games you can play solo, and that's the thing. A lot of these games I do enjoy playing solo. It's just a case of what I feel like at any particular time and how much time I have on my hands, which sadly is not as much as I would like. I mean, in an ideal world, I wouldn't have a job, which means that I could play games all the time and play all the games in my collection solo and just have fun. I mean, seriously, if I win the lottery, that's pretty much my life from that point forward. But, you know, you can dream, but reality is a harsh mistress, okay? So, you know, you have to accept that time is a little bit limited. And certainly this week, as I record this, I've actually got a little bit of time off work, so I am going to try and chill with some games from a solo perspective that I probably haven't played for a while. But then you've got to relearn some of the rules and etc. It's tricky to get them all in, but what it means is that there's just so many to try, so many to go for. Pretty much every game now has to come out with a solo mode these days, and sometimes they work brilliantly, hence I've got this list of 25, and sometimes you can just tell that they just shoehorned it in, or they didn't think about it, or it was bolted in just to make sales, you know, because let's face it, every time a game comes out on Kickstarter, you know, everybody is whining in the comments going, where's my solo mode? Where's my solo mode? It's like, oh, for crying out loud. I like solo modes in games, but not every single game needs one, people, okay? Stop forcing publishers to shoehorn them in, because you just know that if they do that, the solo mode's going to suck, or it's not going to be worth it. And worse still, they might even charge you for the solo mode. It's like, do you want to play this game solo? Well, give us $100 for the game and then give us another 25 to play it solo. Yeah, remember Andromeda's Edge? You know, there's definitely, you know, some cons about forcing solo modes into every game in existence. That being said, a lot of games do have solo modes, and a lot of them are fun. So there was 25. Maybe another time later in the year I might do like another 25, but just consider this a kind of like pseudo top 10 list. It's basically 25 of my favorite solo games that I played. There's definitely more, but you know, I'm sure you lot will have a bunch of more in the comments as well. So that's it for me on this episode of the Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up and let me know your thoughts. Do you like the games I've mentioned? Do you have ones that I haven't mentioned on any of this list of 25? By all means, get them down. I'm pretty certain I can expect at least a couple down there. One from Vlada Shivato, I'm pretty certain is going to make the comments from one or two people I know. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But I just don't like the game. But by all means, let me know your thoughts. It would be cool to get an idea. Of course, keep them civil, keep them on topic. No insulting, no flaming, and all will be well. And until next time, I guess I've got another top 10 list in mind. There are games I've warmed up to. If I can create a list of 10 for that, that would be quite cool. Because normally you say you cool down on games, or they get worse over time. There's a few games that have got a little bit better over time. You know, I originally thought they were meh, and then I go, oh, actually, you know what, I kind of like these. You know, things have gotten better. So that might be a nice positive list as well. Other than that, though, I don't have any games to review right now. I literally have dried up ever since Apex Legends. So, yeah, more time for top 10 lists, I guess, until I can find something else worth reviewing. We shall see. But until then, until next time, remember, regardless of whether you prefer to play by yourself or play with other people, it's still only a game, so whatever suits you, run with it. Take care. Bye for now.